for a small country, there's no other exit. Either you're gonna be under one big country or you're gonna be under another big country. This is how it works.
The UN Charter set up a system of international law prohibiting wars of conquest, like the ones waged by the Nazis and the Japanese. It also served as a forum in which the international community could weigh in on disputes and help resolve them. This way, the Americans hoped, great powers could resolve their differences through compromise and law rather than war.
It didn't work out. What's up, team? My name is Tom, and today I'm gonna react to how America became a superpower. And by America, I mean USA, guys. So let's dive into it.
The modern United States is the most powerful country in human history, with over
That's for
800
sure.
military
That's for
bases
sure.
and 37% of global military spending. The US has become the leader of a vast, interconnected global system that has helped usher in an era of unprecedented prosperity and low levels of conflict. To understand America's position in the world, and why it's so pivotal for world politics as we know it, you have to go back to the country's founding, back to when America wasn't a global power in any sense of the word. During the first 70 years of its existence, the United States expanded in both territory and influence in North America, eventually reaching the Pacific Ocean, in a wave of expansionism that resulted in the wholesale slaughter of the indigenous people who populated the continent. The
Yeah.
early Americans were deeply divided as to whether the country should expand beyond.
Also, California was a part of Mexico back in the day, and United States had to go to war with Mexicans to own that land.
beyond the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans. This became a major debate after the Civil War, when some leaders, like post-war Secretary of State Seward, argued that America should push to become a global power. Seward succeeded in pushing a plan to purchase Alaska from Russia, but his attempts to buy Greenland and Iceland, as well as annexed territory in the Caribbean, were all blocked by Congress. That's because some Americans, including many on Capitol Hill, had a strong anti-imperialist
Who does own Greenland at the moment, I wonder? If you know the answer, please leave it in comment section.
bent. These people worried about America getting more involved in global politics, as well as having to integrate populations from quote-unquote inferior races. And this opposition implied major checks on the imperialist urge to expand. But something was happening in the late 1800s that would change the debate about American expansionism. The Industrial Revolution produced explosive economic growth, and the bigger US economy required a more centralized state and bureaucracy to manage the growing economy. Power became concentrated in the federal government, making it easier for expansionist presidents, like William McKinley, to unilaterally push American influence abroad. The key turning point came in 1898, when President McKinley dragged the country into war with Spain over Cuba, despite some intense domestic opposition.
That I
The
didn't
rising
know.
United States easily defeated the moribund Spanish Empire.
Yeah, Cuba was like, I know that Cuba was puppet puppet country for America. Basically, they had a person like a president there who was like loyal to the U.S. government, and they used Cuba as a place for vacations, to people to go and relax. They had a lot of casinos and hotels over there. Gangsters especially used that, and after the revolution, basically it all ended.
Acquiring Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines in the process. Over the next 2 years, the US would annex the Kingdom of Hawaii, Wake Island, and American Samoa. A few years later, the US took control of the Panama Canal Zone and sent troops to occupy the Dominican Republic. It also purchased the American Virgin Islands. This period of rapid acquisition of far-flung territories put the US on the map as a truly global power. During this time, America also began using its influence to protect its growing commercial and military interests abroad, installing pro-American regimes in places like Nicaragua, and playing a major role in international diplomacy regarding
I think one of the presidents of United States said that South America and Central America is United's backyard or something like that. So by that he meant that they need to control it.
Western presence in China. World War I showed just how much America's influence had grown. Not only was American intervention a decisive factor in the war's end, but President Wilson attended the Paris Peace Conference, which ended the war, and attempted to set the terms of the peace. He spearheaded America's most ambitious foreign policy initiative yet, an international organization called the League of Nations, designed to promote peace and cooperation globally. The League, a wholesale effort to remake global politics, showed just how ambitious American foreign policy had become. Yet isolationism was still a major force in the United States. Congress blocked the United States from joining the League of Nations, dooming Wilson's project. During the Great
This
Depression and the
is
rise of Hitler, the
interesting.
US was much more focused on its own region than on European affairs. Ultimately, America's ever-growing entanglements abroad made it impossible for it to stay out of global affairs.
United States made very big profits during the first part of the Second World War because they were sending, making, and selling bullets, ammunition, and all other things that you need at war to European countries to fight Nazis.
Entirely. In East Asia, the growing Japanese Empire posed a direct threat to American possessions and troops, bringing the United States and Japan into conflict. This culminated in the Pearl Harbor attack, bringing the United States into World War II. World War II would transform America's global presence forever.
Yeah,
The United
that's for
States was
sure.
the only major power to avoid economic ruin during the war, and it was the sole country equipped with atomic weapons. As such, it was in a unique position to set the terms of the peace, and, with the aim of preventing another war in mind, it took advantage. The most famous example of this is the creation of the United Nations. The UN Charter set up a system of international law prohibiting wars of conquest, like the ones waged by the Nazis and the Japanese. It also served as a forum in which the international community could weigh in on disputes and help resolve them. This way, the Americans hoped, great powers could resolve their differences through compromise and law rather than war.
It didn't work
But
out.
while the UN is the most famous of the post-war institutions, it isn't the only one. 730 delegates from all 44 allied nations came together in a small vacation haven in New Hampshire. Their goal? To establish a global financial system that would prevent another Great Depression and World War. The resulting agreement, called the Bretton Woods Agreement, ultimately became the backbone of the global financial system, resulting in the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. By creating these
By the way, some countries in Europe, to avoid handling their gold to Nazis, they send their gold to USA, as I heard. Not sure
institutions, the
about
United
that
States committed
100%,
itself to
but I
being
heard
deeply
this.
involved in the world's problems. The issue, though, is that the world's second largest power, the Soviet Union, saw things differently. World War II had made allies out of the democratic West and communist East in the fight against Hitler, but that couldn't last. The United States saw Soviet expansion in Eastern Europe and elsewhere as a direct threat to its vision of a free trading, democratic world.
Yeah, Soviet Union took over Latvia. I'm from Latvia, by the way, and Soviet Union took over Latvia in 1941. It was very sad because first, as I understood, they told us that they just want like naval bases here, nothing more. And after that, they moved the soldiers in. And after that, they said, "Sorry, guys, we're gonna put our government here, the people who are like loyal to us and etc etc." And in the end they just like took us over, and that's it, man. And this is what we are avoiding now. This is what we don't want to let happen again, by Russia coming to Baltic states. It happened once. It hopefully won't happen again.
To a substantial degree, in one form or another, socialism has spread the shadow of human regimentation over most
Man,
of the
I'm
nations of the
pro
earth,
democracy.
and
I don't like
the shadow
socialism
is
at all.
encroaching upon our own
Not
liberty.
not very nice. A
Fearful
lot
of
of
Soviet
power to
intentions towards Western
small
Europe,
group of
the US
people.
and other European nations created the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, a military alliance meant to stop Russia from invading other countries in Europe.
Yeah, this is a big one, by the way, because another reason why Soviet Union occupied us with any consequences, it was because there was nobody backing us back then, and this is a great reason why they created this NATO alliance. And also, this is what happened to Finland. Soviet Union went war with Finland, and because of big manpower, bigger manpower than the Finland had. Yes, they pushed through. They won the war, and basically Finland had nobody to back up. So they were alone in the war. And thanks to NATO,
Globally,
it,
the
it,
US
it
committed to a
solves this
strategy
problem
called
basically.
containment, so called because it was aimed at containing the spread of communism everywhere on the globe. This new global struggle meant that the US had to exert influence everywhere, all the time. Instead of disbanding the massive military machine created for World War II, the wheels mostly kept turning. This had two main results. First, the US was pulled into unlikely alliances with countries like Saudi Arabia, Israel, and South Korea, seeing each of them as bulwarks against communist influence in their region. Secondly, the US began intervening, often secretly, in dozens of countries to contain Soviet influence. Sometimes this meant propping up sympathetic dictators, like in Iran. Other times, it meant supplying rebels with arms and money, like in Afghanistan in 1979 and Nicaragua in 1985. Over the course of the Cold War, the US intervened in hundreds of disputes around the globe, ending up with a complicated set of alliances, tensions, and relationships in basically every corner of the Earth.
That was the battle of the ideology, right? Either it's democracy or it's socialism, because they could not fight in the straight war, like just start war between each other, because both nations had atomic bombs, right? But they could create small conflicts all around the world and fight for influence in other countries, to have more influence in the world.
After the Berlin Wall fell, the US could have withdrawn from the system, severing ties with its allies and drawing down the size of its military. And while the US did decrease military spending, much of the military infrastructure and alliances from the Cold War remained. Presidents George H.W. Bush and Bill Clinton decided that it was in both America and the world's interests for the United States, now the sole superpower on Earth, to continue actively managing global affairs.
We should be and we must be peacemakers.
NATO, created solely as a tool for countering the Soviet Union, stayed together and even expanded, a way of keeping European nations united in the absence of the Soviet threat.
Yeah, we joined in 2004, and I'm really happy that we did it. I'm really happy, because alone there's no chance. For a small country, there's no other exit. Either you're gonna be under one big country or you're gonna be under another big country. This is how it works.
Like Israel and Japan stayed intact, ostensibly as a means of preventing war in their respective regions. The global system of alliances and institutions created to keep the peace during the Cold War became permanent, as did the American military and political commitments necessary to keep them running. This system remains in operation today, and no leading American politician since the Cold War has seriously called for dismantling it. Except, perhaps, for Donald Trump. Trump has said contradictory things about these commitments, but he's consistently argued that American allies are not paying the US enough for its protection, and questioned the value of free trade.
Yeah,
That
I heard
calls
this
NATO
opinion.
and even the World Trade Organization into question.
Well, maybe
At
he's
some
right,
point,
of
we
course.
have to say, you know what? We're better off if Japan protects itself against this maniac in North Korea. We're better off, frankly, if South Korea is going to start to protect itself.
Saudi Arabia,
We have
nuclear weapons?
Saudi Arabia, absolutely.
This is a sharp divergence from the consensus
Saudi
that has
Arabia,
dominated US
absolutely.
foreign policy since 1945, and something closer to the isolationism that came before it. So will President Trump act on some of candidate Trump's ideas and reverse decades worth of
We will
institution
see.
building and
Probably he's gonna be
alliances?
the president
We'll find
again.
out
Who
soon enough.
knows?